From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I am Ahmed Ramadan. Over 400 musicians, including Massive Attack and Primal Scream, have joined the No Music for Genocide campaign. This and more coming up on today's show. Stay tuned. A Jewish man has been arrested for threatening Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee for New York City mayor. 44-year-old Jeremy Fistel from Plano, Texas, sent a series of messages laced with anti-Muslim slurs, calling Mamdani a terrorist and warning him not to start his car, hinting that it might explode. The hateful voicemail and written messages began in June and continued through July. Fistel pleaded not guilty in Queens Criminal Court yesterday to a 22-count indictment. Charges included making a terroristic threat and aggravated harassment. Prosecutors say the threat spanned 7 weeks starting in June as Mamdani's campaign gained national attention. The case comes amid a climate of rising political violence in the U.S. In June, Minnesota Democratic lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated in their home in a targeted political attack. The shooter had a list of additional Democratic candidates that he was planning to kill. Last week, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot dead in Utah. Fistel has a prior conviction in a 2012 drug conspiracy case. He attended Orthodox Jewish schools and regularly went to synagogue, according to the New York Times. More than 400 international musicians have signed a petition demanding their songs be pulled from streaming platforms in Israel. The campaign, called No Music for Genocide, was launched in response to the genocide in Gaza. Artists include Massive Attack, Primal Scream, Japanese Breakfast, and King Cruel. The signatories say cultural institutions should not remain neutral while civilians are being killed. Organizers urged major record labels to follow suit, as they did when they blocked Russia after its invasion of Ukraine. The petition calls on artists and right holders to take direct action by withdrawing their music from Israeli platforms. The campaign has gained traction in recent days as Israel expands its genocide with fierce bombardment on Gaza City in particular. Supporters say withholding music sends a strong message of solidarity and protest. Google secretly handed U.S. immigration authorities data from a student's Gmail account who supported the Free-Palestine cause. The Intercept reports that the move came as Homeland Security investigations, or HSI, targeted international students linked to protests against Israel's genocide in Gaza. HSI is a division of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Cornell graduate students Mamadou Tal and Amandla Thomas Johnson went into hiding fearing arrest. HSI issued subpoenas to Google and Meta demanding account details. Meta allowed Tal a chance to challenge the subpoena, but in Thomas Johnson's case, Google complied before he was notified, leaving him no chance to contest. Law experts warn that administrative subpoenas, which require no judge's approval, are open to abuse. They say targets often never know their data is seized. Google claims it only handed over basic subscriber details, not emails or metadata. Civil rights advocates say Silicon Valley's quiet compliance with the Trump administration's immigration crackdown puts students backing the Free Palestine cause at greater risk. President Donald Trump has sanctioned 3 Palestinian human rights organizations for working with the International Criminal Court, or ICC, to hold Israel accountable for war crimes in Gaza. The Treasury Department has named Al-Haq, Al-Mizan, and the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, accusing them of helping ICC prosecutors investigate Israeli leaders. It is the first time the U.S. has sanctioned groups solely for peaceful legal advocacy. Rights defenders say the move is part of a wider crackdown on civil society globally. They warn that any organization could be next, such as climate activists and reproductive rights groups. The sanctions mirror Israel's recent actions against Palestinian and international NGOs. Last week, Representative Brian Mast, a pro-Israel Florida Republican, introduced a bill to revoke the passports of Americans accused of aiding so-called terrorist groups. Analysts have warned that if passed, it could be used to silence dissent on Israel. A similar attempt to strip nonprofits of tax-exempt status also failed narrowly. Rights groups say both Washington and Tel Aviv are obstructing international justice and violating the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute is an international treaty that established the International Criminal Court, or ICC, which focuses on genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. Civil society leaders fear the measures will chill free speech and advocacy, pushing America closer to authoritarianism. Senator Jeff Merkley has introduced a landmark resolution urging Washington to recognize a Palestinian state. He said recognition is both a moral duty and a practical step towards peace. The plan calls for a demilitarized Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel based on international law and the two-state solution. The resolution also demands an immediate ceasefire, release of hostages, and full aid access. Merkley stressed that the next generation cannot be left to suffer the same cycle of violence. The measure follows his recent trip to Gaza's border, Israel, the West Bank, Jordan, and Egypt. It has backing from Senator Chris Van Hollen, Tim Kaine, Bernie Sanders, and others. The U.S. has vetoed a UN resolution calling for a permanent Gaza ceasefire, its sixth since October, despite 14 members voting in favor. Details coming up after the break. Welcome back. The United States has again vetoed a UN Security Council draft resolution demanding an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. 14 members voted in favor, but Washington stood alone against the measure. The draft, put forward by 10 elected members, including Denmark, Pakistan, and Algeria, called for an end to Israel's offensive, unrestricted humanitarian aid, and a halt to any demographic or territorial changes in Gaza. It also condemned Israel's use of starvation as a weapon of war and urged the release of all hostages. Denmark's envoy said the resolution aimed only to ease civilian suffering, but the U.S. argued that the text ignored what it called increased humanitarian aid to Gaza and continued to back Israel. This marks the sixth U.S. veto of ceasefire resolutions since October 2023. The global Samud flotilla is making its way to Gaza to break the Israeli siege. 50 boats from 44 countries, the largest such convoy in history, are making their way to deliver food, aid, baby formula, and other essentials. Israel attacked the flotilla as they gathered in Tunisia on September 9th. Muslim Network TV's contact on the flotilla will be providing the latest. Currently, the flotilla has some setbacks due to weather conditions in the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, in Palestine, Israeli soldiers killed at least 29 Palestinians on Friday in strikes across Gaza. Doctors said Israeli ground assaults and air raids killed 15 people in Gaza City, including 2 people waiting for food aid. The Palestinian Health Ministry reports that 33 bodies were brought to the hospital in 24 hours with 146 injured. Many victims remain trapped under rubble as rescuers struggle to reach them. 1 person was killed and 17 wounded while seeking humanitarian aid, raising the total killed by Israeli soldiers and American mercenaries while trying to get food to 2,514 since May. 4 more, including a child, died of starvation, pushing the famine-linked deaths to 440, most of them children. Israel has sealed all crossings into Gaza since March 2nd, creating the famine. The UN Food Security Agency warns that hunger is spreading south. Since October 2023, Israel's war has killed more than 65,174 Palestinians and injured over 166,000, with projections expecting the actual number to be in the hundreds of thousands. International courts accuse Israel of war crimes and genocide. Palestinians are fleeing Gaza City in large numbers as Israel expands its ethnic cleansing. Families are moving day and night along Al-Rashid Street under heavy bombardment and forced evacuation orders. The Israeli military has escalated shelling, airstrikes, and home demolitions using booby-trapped robots. The Israeli military says about 480,000 Palestinians have fled southward so far from Gaza City. Israel has begun a ground invasion in a bid to seize the territory's largest urban center. Witnesses say there has been no full-scale incursion yet, but the attacks are part of a campaign of mass displacement. The assault began August 11 in the Zaytun neighborhood under the name Operation Gideon's Chariots 2. It followed Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's approval of a plan to fully reoccupy Gaza, starting with Gaza City. Congressional Democrats have unveiled a new legislation to protect free speech and dissent in the United States. Senator Chris Murphy has introduced the No Political Enemies Act, warning that President Donald Trump is openly planning to use federal power to punish critics. Murphy says the bill will ensure the law stands with free expression and creates a defense for people targeted for political reasons. It also sets consequences for government officials who misuse authority against protected speech. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer backed the bill, saying no president should turn the government into a weapon of political revenge. The legislation was introduced in the Senate and the House. Democrats say it is a safeguard against future attacks on First Amendment rights. A new study finds that even professional economists are swayed by partisan bias. Researchers analyzed nearly 40 years of Wall Street Journal forecasting surveys. They linked predictions to economists' political affiliations using donation records and voter data. The study found that Republican forecasters systematically predicted higher GDP growth under Republican presidents. On average, their projections overshot by 10% to 15%. That optimism made forecasts less accurate. The bias showed up only in GDP forecasts, not in unemployment, inflation, or interest rate predictions. Under Democratic leaders such as Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, partisan gaps virtually disappeared. The team traced the skew to views on tax cuts. When tax policy debates dominates headlines, Republican economists grew markedly more upbeat. The findings matter because policymakers, investors, and the Federal Reserve rely heavily on these forecasts. A breakthrough in artificial intelligence could change preventive medicine. Scientists have developed Delphi 2M, a modified language model that predicts the person's risk of more than 1,000 diseases, sometimes up to 20 years in advance. Published in Nature, the study says the model uses health records, age, sex, body mass index, and lifestyle factors such as smoking and alcohol use. It can flag risks for cancers, skin conditions, and immune disorders. Unlike earlier tools that focused on single diseases, Delphi 2M covers 1,258 illnesses. For most conditions, it matched or outperformed traditional models. The tool was trained on data from 400,000 UK biobank participants and 1.9 million patients in Denmark's National Registry. Researchers say the model could help doctors identify high-risk patients early and provide preventive care. The study describes it as a step towards personalized medicine with the power to save lives. Uzbekistan has taken a major step to reshape its financial system. Lawmakers in the Central Asian country's Oli Mejlis approved the first reading of a draft law introducing Islamic banking. The bill amends the tax code, civil code, and other laws. It allows for fully Islamic banks or Islamic windows in conventional banks. Financial tools such as Murabaha, Mudaraba, Musharaka, Wakala, and Salam contracts will be recognized. Deputy Central Bank Chairman Abrokhayja Dordaliyev said the reforms are not only about removing legal barriers, but also about building institutions. The plan includes councils, audit bodies, and accounting systems to ensure compliance with Islamic principles. Islamic banking bans interest and financing of prohibited activities. It promotes partnership and risk sharing. The draft law also creates a special tax regime for Islamic finance. Drawing on models from Malaysia, Turkey, and the UAE, Uzbekistan aims to expand access to finance and attract foreign investment. A new Brown University exhibit explores how fashion from Islamic uprising helped shape American identity. Fashioning Insurrection from Imperial Resistance to American Orientalism opened September 9 at the John Hay Library. It traces how 19th century Americans borrowed clothing and symbols from insurrections such as the Greek War of Independence and Algeria's resistance to France. Curator Gwendolyn Colesso says she first planned to focus on the revolution from a non-Western perspective. But deeper research showed the collection's military uniforms told a powerful story about U.S. society and fashion. One highlight is a sword from the Algerian resistance, once owned by Rush Hawkins, who married Anne Mary Brown, granddaughter of the university's namesake. Faiz Ahmed is Associate Professor of Modern Middle Eastern History at Brown University. In an interview with campus newspaper Brown Daily Herald, he said the exhibit offers a reminder that the U.S. and societies of the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia in the 18th and 19th centuries were not isolated entities. The exhibit is part of a broader Center for Middle East Studies initiative on American Islamic exchanges that won funding earlier this year. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.